What's up, everybody? Welcome to a very special TnS Weekly review. This week we'll be doing things a bit differently, but this week 1 minute TnS was able to break its own record again. Now, it did break its own record, but someone in my Discord community brought up a good point saying, well, Plyo, these aren't really the real stats because everyone can't possibly take every single trade. He's absolutely correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it realistically, taking the trades in chronological order to see what your stats would be, comparing it to how the daily review stats are, and we're going to see what the end result would be. But before we do that, I do have only one trade to show you guys as an honorable mention, because I did tell everybody that the 5-minute catches a 100-point play every single week, and I do want to show that off. Just one trade for the 5-minute, then we'll jump right into the 1-minute back testing for the week. All right, so here we are with our honorable mention. This one comes from the 5-minute TnS on Friday, October 3rd at 1:10 p.m. We're here focusing on the lower entry here, and you have the 35-point stop. The original TP was for 49 points, but if you held a runner, you could have easily got 100 plus, so I'm just going to show that out here. Of course, it did dip down more than 100, but the 5-minute does catch 100-point play every single week. But of course, it did run for, a bit more. But now moving on to the main part of this video, because this isn't, of course, what we even want to focus on today. We're here to focus on how the 1 minute did realistically. Okay, so before I begin with our main event, basically backtesting the entire week for the 1 minute TnS to see realistically how many points you could have caught, I do want to talk about the rules and how this is actually supposed to be done. Okay, so in the TnS rules, you can only take one entry per setup. What does that mean exactly? Say we had an FVG here with 2 entries, right? Price is coming down. You have to take your pick on which entry you want, okay? Sometimes price will only tap into one and then we'll just go. Sometimes it'll tap into both and then we'll go, okay? But you can only pick one, which means sometimes the FEG is big, or maybe we run through the FEG. This higher entry stop loss is still 25 points. This one is still 25 points. Sometimes we'll dip down and then this higher one gets stopped and then the lower one wins, right? The lower one still survives the 25-point stop, but the higher one gets stopped out. That means that somebody lost here and somebody else won. Same thing for short. Say we have a bearish FEG and we have 2 entries. One of them gets tagged in and we leave the other one. That means whoever had their limit order sitting at this first entry, they get a win, but someone who has a limit order up here doesn't even get tagged in. They don't even take the trade. But either way, when we come back to this FEG, you're not even looking to take this trade anymore because that's against the rules as well. So please read the TnS Notion or watch the TnS Rules Guide to make yourself more familiar with the rules if it's something that's unfamiliar to you. But these are the rules. Now, the last scenario would be, okay, if both entries get tagged and they both win, right? So say they both get tagged in and then it just goes straight to the TP. What does that mean? It means that both people won here, but it's still only counted as one win in the daily reviews because truly you can only pick one. So the outcome is the same. If someone has a limit order here, they won. If someone has a limit order here, they won. But I'm not going to count that as 2 trades. I'll only count it as 2 trades if one person loses here, one person wins here. To help visualize this better, I have it written here in text so we can all see it. So what I mean by this, see, I take this higher entry and then someone else takes this lower one. Just for example, this lower entry doesn't survive a 25-point stop. Just say for hypothetical that this is a 25-point stop. It gets stopped out. My stats will show that I lost this trade. If someone has a limit order down here, say for example, it survives a 25-point stop, right? They're going to get a win, and they did take a loss here. However, we can both only pick one entry from this FEG. There's only going to be a maximum of 2 entries, so you have to take your pick. You cannot take both, okay? What I'd show in the daily reviews is 1 win and 1 loss to show that someone won and someone lost. It's not to pad the stats. It's to simply show, okay, someone lost here and someone else won. What this means is that if you take the second entry every single time, you should have better results than the daily reviews. Now, if you're taking the first entry every time, maybe not as great as if you're taking the second one, but it still should be around the same amount of points as the daily reviews. Now, the 1 minute TnS finished with 280 points this week from the daily review stats. If these stats that I'm about to show you next are not inflated, it means that they should be somewhere around 200 points at least for both. Now, once again, I have no idea how this is going to go, but that's how it should be because the daily reviews are showing the blended results. That's it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to review the entire week, every single trade from the 1 minute TnS this week to see do the stats show something similar to what I have in the daily reviews? All right, so before I get started with Monday, I do want to show you guys my 1-minute TnS indicator settings here. All I have is a 1-minute preset, display old setups, and the session filter disabled so we can see everything. Okay, that's it. Nothing else has been changed. So here we are in 926. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to have a table set up right here that displays whatever day I'm backtesting. And then if the first entry gets tagged in and it's a win or loss, write it down here. If its second entry gets tagged in, win or loss, write it down here. If there's only one entry, it's going to be counted for both because there's only one entry here. That's the only one you can possibly take. That's what it's going to be. Also, I'm going to be doing it in chronological order. So if there's overlapping trades, we can only take what's there that gets tagged in first. And you'll see what I mean as we keep going. So here we go. So this is Monday at 9:26. I'm going to fast forward it a bit so we can see. You can see that this one looks like it gets tagged in. Let's see if it's going to be a win or a loss. Okay, that one looks like a loss. So trade number one for both is going to be a loss. Okay, now moving on, since we have that one out the way, that's trade number one as a loss for both, the first entry and second entry. Once again, I am in historical mode, so if there's any setups here, it will show. And this one looks like we have another one entry here. Let's see what happens. It's the TP's for 12 points. It did get TP, so once again, this will be trade number two as a win for 12 points for both. Okay, so moving on, once again, this one did win for 12 points. Ignore this because it already got TP. We're dropping down. Once again, I am in historical mode, so it's going to show any setups that I miss. Okay, so right here, for example, you can see we have a bunch of overlapping setups. I'm only focusing on the one that gets tagged in first, okay, to keep it extremely realistic. So you can see we create a long first and it gets tagged in here. The short is there, but it's not tagged in yet, so we're only focusing on the long here. There's only one entry. And let's see, does it get TP? It's for 22 points. If it does get TP, the TP is right here on this green line. Okay, looks like the long got TP. So that's going to be trade number three for both. Okay, now, as soon as this one gets TP, if you're taking the trades fully mechanically, I'm going to get rid of the long now. I'm going to exit historical mode. So now we're only focused on the shorts because the long did just get TP, right? If you're taking the trades fully mechanically, you could have entered the short. As soon as this one gets TP, you could have hopped in the short as we pass back through the entry. So using this type of logic, as soon as one gets TP, if we're inside of another short setup or another setup in general, you can enter that, okay? But you can still only enter one as long as it's not overlapping, which means if this one gets TP on this candle, if we come back down and hit this entry, you can hop in that short. It looks like you can. And so this short, the TP for it, let's back up so we can see it. The TP for this short setup up here only, the TP is down here, right here. For looks like 17 points because the entry is at 57. Okay, which means it's going to be trade number four for both as a win for 17 points. Okay, now just to show you guys, it did end up winning once again. You can see got TP there. Now, once again, realistically, you would not be able to take this middle one. Why is that? It's because if you got TP on the long up here and you hop in this short, you can't just re-enter here because you're already looking to get TP down here. Okay? What that also means is that once this gets TP, you have a chance to maybe take this short now. And so you can absolutely take this one, but you can't take this middle one here. Okay? I want to make that very, very clear. So if you can take this short right here, this TP is for 10 points, and this one did get TP as well. I do remember this one. So this will be trade number five for both as a win for 10 points. Okay, now once again, just to show the TP is right here. It does get TP for 10, and you can see it swept that. And then we eventually also hit the other one's TP, the middle one. Now I do want to make it very clear, once again, you cannot take the middle TP. I mean, you cannot take the middle setup realistically here. You cannot. Okay, I want to make that extremely clear. Now, once again, I'm going to go back in historical mode. So you can see you would take the long here. As soon as the long gets TP, you can take the short there. The short gets TP right here. Okay, you're not in anything anymore, but you can take this new short, and then boom, you get that for 10 points as well. Okay, you cannot take this middle one, though, realistically. Okay, and so they all got TP. Now we're ignoring everything that happens here. We're only focused on the short now. There's only one entry here, which means this one, if it wins, it's going to be 18 points. If it loses, it's going to be minus 25 for both. Let's see. Okay, looks like there's a long setup here. I want to make it very clear. You cannot take this long setup because this short got tagged in first. Okay, even though the long one, you cannot take that long because the short got tagged in first. So we're still only looking at the short to see if it gets TP or stopped out. And this would be a stop loss for the short. Let's see what happens. Okay, looks like it got stopped. Okay, so that means trade number 6 is a loss for both. And once again, you cannot take that. You cannot take the long there because it did win, but you can't take it because you're already in the short. Taking the trades in chronological order with no bias, just fully mechanically. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of the old setups there because it's kind of messing up the chart a bit. I'm gonna fast forward and see if we get another setup. Okay, still nothing yet. No setups yet. Put it back in historical mode just so I can make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, but it looks like this short right here failed. Okay, so once again, this one has 2 entries, but even if you take your entry here or your entry there, doesn't matter. They both get stopped. So what does that mean? It's still a loss for both. That's what I was trying to explain in the beginning. So trade number 7 is going to be a loss for both. That was the short right there. Okay, so now moving on. That looks like it's 4 p.m. right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tally up all of this right now and then save it to a notepad, and then we'll move on to the next day. All right, so these would be our final stats if you're taking all the trades realistically in chronological order. For Monday, we have minus 14 points, 0.5 R, 4 wins and 3 losses. That totals up to be 7 trades total. And you can see how that's kind of different from the daily reviews. It has 9 trades total, 6 wins, 3 losses, and plus 14 points. So basically flipped. Okay, so Monday so far is flipped, and now we're going to move on to Tuesday. You're going to see these stats again at the very end, so don't worry. All right, so here we are at Tuesday, September 30th. And you can see I have my mouse right here on the 9:29 a.m. candle. So we'll just jump right into it at 9:30 here. Let's see. So it looks like we get a short setup there. It doesn't get tagged in. Now remember, I am in historical mode. Those are old setups from like pre-market basically, or London session. But we're here only look at 9:30 to 4 p.m. And so you can see this short does get tagged in. Now you can see this is where it comes in handy to mark out the first entry and second entry with the table. The first entry would be the slower one. That's going to be for 34 points if this wins. So let's see, does it win first so I can see? Okay, it does win. So backing up just a second, the first entry is the lower one here. This one is going to be a win for 34 points. For the second entry, you can see it says 35, which means it's going to be a win for 35 points. So it's just a 1 point difference. Okay, but it does get TP. Now for the daily reviews, I always use the first entry to make it a bit harder. Always. I never use the second entry. Okay, I do want to make that very clear. Okay, and then we get this new short setup. This one looks like it gets stopped out. So this will be trade number 2 for both because there's only 1 entry anyways. So trade number 2 for both is going to be a loss. Okay, now once again to show this one did lose, you can see it got stopped out there. Then we get a new short setup here. It looks like that one won. Sorry, I'm going pretty quick. Okay, this one only has 1 entry, which means it's going to be a win for both for 29 points. So trade number 3 is going to be a win for both for 29 points. And once again, to show you it did win right here. You can see it did get TP right there. Now moving on, we get another short setup here, and this one looks like it failed. Only 1 entry there, so that's going to be trade number 4 as a loss for both. Okay, now zooming out here, I do want to make sure that we have everything checked. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 setups. We have 4 trades, so that is correct. And now moving on, looks like we get a short there. Doesn't come back yet. Okay, we get a long here. So this is where the second entry would not even get tagged in. So I do want to make that very clear. If you're taking the first entry here, you would have got a win here, but the second entry doesn't even take this trade. Okay, I want to make that very, very clear. So let's see how many points this one won for. Looks like 22 because the second entry would be for more points anyways. That's 28, so it doesn't get tagged in. But for the first entry, this will be trade number 5. Okay, so we have for the first entry as a win for trade number 5 as a 22-point win, as you can see. Okay, and then we do dip down for that second entry. Now remember, you can only use the TnS entry only 1 time, or 1 time per setup is what I mean to say. Which means after this one gets TP, you're not even looking to take this TnS play anymore. It's only even showing because I'm in historical mode once again. Okay, now backing up to about right here, I do want to make it very clear what happens. We tap into this short setup, okay? We do make a long setup down here, but what gets tagged in first is this short right here, which means This short setup is the only thing you can be in because the TP is down here, okay? And I do remember this play, so it's going to be trade number 6 as a win for 31 points for the first entry, and then it's going to be trade number 5 as a win for 31 points for the second entry. Okay, once again, there's only one entry here, which means everyone takes this. So that's why it's both. And so once again, the TP is right here, and there's a long setup, which means you cannot take the long until this one gets TP. Okay, so this one gets TP, and then we come back up. Now, using that same exact logic as I used on Monday, as soon as one gets TP, you can take this. Mechanically, you would take this because we're tapping back into the entries. I want to make that very, very clear. We're tapping back into both of these long entries right here, which means you have every chance to take this. And unfortunately, they did lose, but it's going to be a loss. Okay, but it did get tagged in. This middle one here did not get tagged back in because why? You'd be in the short here trying to get TP. You wouldn't have a chance to enter this unless we come back up to it right now. So let's see what happens. Okay, you can see we just missed that entry, which means you would still only be taking your pick on one of these two long entries and be stuck in the trade. And unfortunately, it does lose. Using the lowest entry here with 25-point stop, you can see it's going to be right here. So I'm just going to mark out the stop loss for that, the lowest stop loss. And you can see it did get stopped out. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that it's going to be trade number 7 for the first entry and trade number 6 for the second entry as a loss. Okay, now as you can see, it is a loss because you could have had a chance to enter this long even after this one gets TP, but you could not have taken the middle one. I want to make that very, very clear. And then, of course, we're ignoring this one because it already played out. Ignoring all these red lines back here, too, because that we already got all that. Okay, we're waiting for a new setup to form, and we form a new one right here. So this one, you can see there, the table shows there's 2 entries. If I zoom in here, there's 2 entries here. They're about like maybe 1 tick apart, okay? But the TP is the same. It's for 15 points, okay? Now let's see, does this one get TP? Okay, looks like it did before getting stopped out. Okay, and once again, the TP was the same. It's only 1 tick apart, so it's going to have the same TP, even though they are 2 different entries. Okay, but it's going to be trade number 8 as a win for 15 points. And then for the second entry, it's going to be trade number 7 as a win for 15. Okay, now moving on, you can see it did get TP there. Once again, ignoring all this to the left. We're only focused on what's about to be made here. If there's another setup. It is about to be 3:30 here. Let's see if there's another setup. Okay, so once again, I am in historical mode, so if there's a setup here, it would have showed, but there's not. And it looks like that might be it for the day because this is the 4 o'clock candle. Okay, so let's tally this up and then compare it to what the daily review has. All right, so these would be our final stats for the realistic entries. The first entry walked away with 56 points, 2.2 R, 5 wins and 3 losses. That's 8 trades total. And the second entry walked away with 35 points, 1.4 R, 4 wins and 3 losses. That's 7 trades total. And the daily review has 9 trades total, 5 wins, 4 losses, and 71 points, 2.8 R. So it is a bit different here. It is. Now let's move on to Wednesday and see what that is. All right, so here I am on Wednesday at the 9:29 candle, and I did want to mention how I have historical mode starting off for this one because I do want to explain something. So with historical mode off, if you zoom out, we only have one short setup up here, okay? And that's going to come in handy in a second here. But say you had your indicator settings with the session filter on FEG validation, you actually would not have seen that setup, okay? Now it is off by default, so people who don't mess with the settings too much, they would have seen that setup. Now I'm going to turn on historical mode so we can see it. And of course, there were a couple of pre-market setups that were there, and it looks like some of them won, some of them lost. But once again, we're only focusing on this short once it gets tagged in, okay? So I am on 9:29. Let's fast forward to 9:30 for open. Let's back up to about right here. We tag in this short, there's only one entry for it. And then we have a long setup here. Now this short, it did escape getting stopped out. And if you have a 25-point stop, I'm going to show you. It got 1 tick away from stopping it out. I know it looks like it got stopped. If you zoom in here, you can see it missed that stop loss by 1 tick, which means you absolutely could have still won this trade because it's 1 tick away. You have a 25-point stop. Even the table shows the stop loss here if you want to try to argue with it. Even if I remove this, you can see the stop loss is right here and it did not get hit, okay? And once again, this one gets tagged in first, which means you wouldn't even take this long because the TP for the short is way down here for 74 points. And this one did end up winning. So since I already know this one ends up winning, it's going to be trade number 1 for both the first entry and second entry because of course there's only one entry here. It's going to be a win for 74 points. Okay, now once again, this one gets tagged in first and the TP is way down here. You would still be in the short here because it didn't get stopped, and then it does get full TP. Okay, taking the trades in chronological order with no bias, just fully mechanically. You would not be in these longs because you're in the short first, okay, and it does get TP, which means you skipped out on this long setup being stopped out because you're already in the short, okay? So now moving on. We have to wait until we get another setup. We get 2 right there, but I don't think we ever came back to those. And then this long right here gets tagged in. You can see there's only 1 entry, which means this one, if it gets TP, will be for 17 points. Let's see what happens. Okay, looks like it got TP. Okay, so that's going to be trade number 2 for both as a win for 17 points. Now, once again, there's only 1 entry here, which is why it's counted for both the first and second entry. But moving on, remember, ignoring this to the left, we're only looking at new setups if they form. Nothing there because I am in historical mode, remember. If there was a setup there, it would have been showed. Looks like we didn't get a setup for a while. Okay, till about right here. So this is a long setup. There's only 1 entry, which means it's going to be counted for both. And it looks like it's another win for 17 points. So it's going to be trade number 3 for both as a win for 17. Okay, once again, just show this one did win. It's trade number 3. Now moving on. We're kind of getting late to the day, so let's see if we get another setup. Remember, I am in historical mode. Okay, so it looks like we can set up here, but it's 4 o'clock pretty much, which means these would be our final stats for today. And now let's tally it up and see how it did. All right, so these will be our final results for the realistic TnS. The first entry with 108 points, 4.3 R, 3 wins, 0 losses, and the second entry with the same exact thing. That's 3 trades total for both. And the daily review with 3 wins, 1 loss, 83 points, 3.3 R. So you can see the realistic results have a better result for this day. Okay, now moving on to Thursday. All right, so here we are at Thursday on the 929 candle. Once again, showing my settings with the 1-minute preset, display old setups, and no session filter on. And let's see what we get. So it looks like we basically just dumped. Once again, I am in historical mode, so if there's a setup anywhere to the left, it would have showed up, but there's not. And this day actually had no losses, so we should get pretty much the same exact thing as the daily review. So you can see we did not tap into that entry there, but now we did once we come back to here. And this one is only 1 entry. And this one, since there's no losses this day, so it's got to be a win. It's going to be a win for both for 21 points. Okay, now once again, just to show it did win. You can see it did take a little minute, but it got TP. Once again, ignoring this red line because we're not even looking at that. We'll look at new setups that form now. Okay, so backing up to here, this one also was a win. Only 1 entry here as well. This will be a win for both for 19 points. Okay, now just to show it did end up winning. You can see it got TP there for 19. Now once again, if we come back up, we're ignoring this because it already got TP. There's no current setups anywhere now. Okay, we create a long setup there. This one did not get tagged in. Kind of went without it. Okay, and then this one, the short that we had way to the left, that was still waiting to get tagged in, is finally getting tagged in now. And you can see there's 2 entries here. So once again, for the daily reviews, I always use the lowest one, which is the first one. It's going to be for 8 points for the first entry and 9 points for the second one because there's a point difference in between these entries, but still going to be a win. So trade number 3 for the first entry is going to be a win for 8 points. Trade number 3 for the second entry is going to be a win for 9. Okay, now just to show you it did win, you can see it did get TP there. And moving on. Basically only need 1 more setup because there's 4 wins, 0 losses today on this Thursday the 2nd. And you can see this one gets tagged in. Once again, zooming in, we missed it the first time there, but it gets tagged in right here, and it got pretty much instant TP. There's only 1 entry here, which means this last play is going to be a win for both for 7 points. So trade number 4 is going to be a win for both for 7 points. Okay, well now once again to show it did get TP. That pretty much leads us right into the end of the day. As you can see, this is the 4 p.m. candle, which means trade number 4 is our last one for both. So let's tally it up and get our final results. All right, so these will be our final results for the realistic stats. The first entry with 55 points, 2.2 R, 4 wins, 0 losses. And the second entry with 56 points, 2.2 R, 4 wins, and 0 losses. 4 trades total for both. And then the daily review pretty much with the same exact thing as the first entry, because that's how I do the daily reviews with the first entry. So it's pretty much the same. All right, so let's move on to the final day, Friday. All right, so here we are with Friday, October 3rd, with the same settings for our indicator with the 928 candle there. And let's just fast forward till we get it set up. Now zooming out, we don't have any setups here, no current setups that need to be tagged in. So we basically have to create one. You can see our first setup is here. So now this one, I do remember this one because it was yesterday. But the lower setup ended up getting stopped. So if you took this lower setup, you have a 25-point stop. You can see that it did get stopped out. Okay. Now the higher setup ended up holding. And this is where you have to basically take your pick. If you take the higher setup here, you got to win. But if you took the lower one, the first entry, you ended up losing this one. So for trade number 1, it's going to be a loss for minus 25 points. And then let's go back to see how many points it would have been for the second entry that survived. It would have been for 35 points. So trade number 1 for the second entry is going to be a win for 35. Okay, once again, the first entry lost, the second entry ended up winning this one. And then it got TP down here. Then we have another short here. We do have one last short set up right here. I'm going to take off historical mode so we can see it just a little bit better. So these are our only 2 available setups that we have. And this one does get tagged in, I do believe. Okay, actually we tapped into a long first. Let me put back historical mode so we can see it. This actually was a setup way to the left. It's only 1 entry here, so that means it did end up winning. It's a win for 23 points for both. Okay, so once again, just to show it did end up winning, you can see it did hit the TP after tapping the entry. And then we tag in the short right here. And once again, taking the trades in chronological order, you could have taken this long here and then the short because it got TP here, which means you could have taken the short as well. And this one has 2 entries. So the first entry, I do remember this one also won. The first entry is going to be for a win for 19 points. The second one, a win for 25. It's going to be trade number 3. So once again, trade number 3 here, the first entry gets a win for 19. The second entry gets a win for 25. And you can see it did get TP. Okay, now moving on, once again, ignoring the setup here, both of these 2 setups, we're only looking to see if this one gets tagged in at the very top. Let's see what happens. So you can see we missed the entry there. We did not tag it in yet, but we do come back for it. So right about here. So I want to point this out very, very clear. We tag in the short first, but as this candle closes, it creates a new long setup. Okay, since you're tagged in the short first, you can't even take the long. Okay, and this short did end up winning. I'm going to mark out the TP so we can see it. The first entry is for 11 points, the second one for 13. So it's going to be trade number 4. Okay, so once again, trade number 4 is a win, the short right here, a win for 11 for the first entry and 13 for the second. And I'm going to fast forward it here so you can see it did end up winning. But once again, there's a long in between there that did get TP. But since we're tagging the short first, you cannot take that long. You're just stuck in the short hoping it gets TP, and then eventually it did, without hitting the stop loss up there. Now, the long stop loss is way down here, but it doesn't even matter because it already got TP, so we're ignoring this red line as well. But that was trade number 4. Once again, we skipped the long because we couldn't take it. Now let me pause it right here till because we basically dumped. Now remember, we're ignoring the stuff on the left because we already saw that. We're only looking at these 3 short setups right here. But this short gets tagged in first, okay, and the short stop loss is right here. To get to that stop loss, we have to tag in the other shorts. Now, realistically, if you're taking this in chronological order, you would be tagged in here trying to get TP, but unfortunately you get stopped out. Now let me pause it right there. So you can see it's only had 1 entry, which means it's going to be trade number 5 as a loss for both. It gets stopped out on this candle right here. Okay, I want to make that very clear. It gets stopped out here. If we were to come back into this short, you can absolutely take this short setup, okay? Because the shorts get tagged back in before we get to the long, which means if you're still taking this stuff in chronological order, you can take this short. because it gets tagged in as we pass back through it. You could have taken your pick on whichever entry you wanted. Say you took the higher or the second entry here, it would have been a win for 25. If you took the lower one, it would have been a win for 23. Okay, now since I do know it wins, it's going to be trade number 6 as a win, like I just said, the first entry for 23, and then the second entry as a win for 25. Now, since we passed through this and tags in the short again first, you cannot take this long. Okay, once again, if you got stopped out here on the first short and you're still looking to take this fully mechanically without even thinking, this short gets tagged in first. Say you didn't even take the first short, you still would have got tagged in on this second short first. Okay, I want to make that very, very clear. You would not be able to take this long regardless. And then the short gets TP there. Okay, ignore this, it's glitch. Okay, that's just a glitch. There's no other TP there. So we got that covered. So once again, you would not be taking this middle entry. So we basically dump, and then we get a long setup here. That one failed. Once again, you can see there's only one entry here, and it does get stopped out right there. So it's going to be trade number 7 as a loss for both. Okay, now moving on, we get another short setup right here, and this one has 2 entries. Okay, you can see they're 1 point apart. So this will be trade number 8 as a win for 23 points, and then trade number 8 for the second entry as a win for 24. So once again, you can see this one candle tapped into both of those entries, and then it gets TP. Took a little minute, but it got TP. So once again, we got all this covered already, so we're only looking for a new setup, ignoring what's already happened. Okay, and so it's still not 4 o'clock yet here, but we have a new short setup here at 3:53. Let's see how this one did. It looks like a win. But the first entry is a win for 12 points, and the higher one is a win, or the second entry is a win for 14, which means trade number 9 for the first entry is going to be a win for 12, and then the second entry is going to be trade number 9 as a win for 14. And that pretty much leads us into the end of the day. Right about here, you can see this is the 4 o'clock candle, which means these would be our final trades. Let's tally it all up and get our final results. All right, so these would be our final results for the realistic stats. The first entry with 36 points, 1.4 R, 6 wins and 3 losses for 9 trades total. The second entry with 109 points, 4.3 R, 7 wins and 2 losses. And the daily review stats with 8 wins and 4 losses, 57 points, 2.4 R, and that's 12 trades total. And so you may be wondering, well, Plyo, how's your 12 trades total? It's because there was a couple of overlapping trades. There's some of them I had to count as 2 trades for, like the first one example. First entry lost and then the second entry won. So that's why it was counted as an extra trade. And then you can see here, it's a very drastic difference here from the first entry and second entry results. It's because there's one in here for 19 points for the third trade, and then this one for 25. And then there's, a couple extra differences in here as well. But yeah, I assure you the math is correct. But now let's tally up all the final results and compare it to the daily reviews final results and see what we get. All right, you guys. So these would be all of our final stats for the 1 minute TnS realistic first entry and second entry, and then the daily review stats here. And now I'm going to show you the full weekly results for them each, but I have to make this a bit smaller so we can fit it all on one screen here. All right, you guys. So these would be our final weekly results for each one. The first entry weekly result with 241 points, 9.6 R, 22 wins, 9 losses. That's 31 trades total. And the second entry weekly result with 294 points, 11.7 R, 22 wins, 8 losses, and that's with 30 trades total. And then the daily reviews with 280 points, 11.2 R, 26 wins, 12 losses, and that's with 38 trades total. So now we can finally see that what I was saying in the very beginning is true, even though I didn't even know the end result. But you can see the second entry, you have the highest points, which is 294. The first entry with 241, and then the daily reviews basically kind of in the middle, like a happy medium between the two, because I'm here to give you both the wins and the losses without bias or without cheating. And so I hope this proves to everyone that I'm not here to stat pad. I'm not here to change any of the results. I'm just here to give you straight up the black and white results from the daily reviews, and you can see it's very similar to the second entry. It is, of course, a little bit drastic from the first entry with about like 40 points extra, but it's still like in between both, which is what it should be. And yeah, guys, it was a fantastic week for the 1 minute TnS. As you can see, pretty much all variations of it are super, super green. And like I said, it's a new record for the 1 minute TnS with 280 points from our daily reviews. And what this shows is that Realistically, you could have walked away with 241 points if you took the first entry mechanically in chronological order as well. And if you took the second entry, you could have walked away with the absolute most points, almost 300 points, guys. That's ridiculous. With 22 wins and only 8 losses. And the cool thing about this as well is that it was able to break its record with fewer setups, because last week it had about 45 setups to get 200 and something points, and this week it got even more with even fewer setups, which is insane. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.